Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. The first balance patch of set 10 has just dropped, and although it's only a small one, it has shifted the meta slightly, giving rise to a few new comps. So we're going to go through the top 5 and how to play them at each stage of the game to help you climb ranked. So let's get into it. Starting off with the most popular comp to come out of this patch, and that is Yone with Crowd Divers and Edgelords. This is a 3-cost reroll comp with Yone as your main carry, mixed with Crowd Divers, Edgelords and Pentakill. Yone receives significant buffs to his health and his abilities AD ratio, making him very strong when he's 3-starred. This comp is very popular at the minute, which means you only want to go for this if you get a headliner Yone or naturally find 2 early on. The headliner you want is of course Yone, and ideally with the +1 to Crowd Diver, but if you find the Edgelord variant, you can look at going 5 Edgelord without it making a huge difference to your overall placement. Augments you want to be looking out for are any reroll or survivability related. As this is a melee carry composition, your carry is a big target in the front line, so any augments that can help with survivability work very well. The standout augment I would be looking out for is Vampirism, as it provides so much value and scales when you get later into the game. If you find Not Today or Idealism, then they both give great survivability, and you can look at building additional ones to put on Zed. For itemization, you want to prioritize survivability items on Yone such as BT, Hodge and Titans, but items such as QSS and Edge of Night work just as well. Prioritizing survivability AD items over pure AD items will work much better, as you already does enough damage. The secondary carry you can itemize once you have finished itemizing Yone is Zed. However, if you do get the Edgelord headliner of Yone, then you should look to itemize Viego, as he also receives some buffs and will be stronger than Zed if you go for 5 Edgelord. For the early game, some good openers to look out for are either Superfan, Edgelord or Pentakill, as these all have good item holders for Yone and slot in well to the end composition as you're leveling up. Level up to 4 at 2-1 unless you have a lot of pairs and don't find a good headliner in the opening 3 rounds. Your main goal is to play the strongest board you can until you get to the mid game where you find your key units. Going into the mid game, you want to follow a standard leveling strategy until you hit level 7, this being level 6 at 3-2 and 7 around 4-1. From there you want to slow roll for Yone 3. If the lobby is fairly weak, you can look at putting in Heartsteel for some extra loot whilst you're slow rolling, but don't try this if you're losing rounds drastically, as you'll most likely be unable to recover once you 3-star Yone. Once you do manage to 3-star Yone, you should look to level to 8 and try to find your 4 and 5 cost Crowd Divers units to cap your board. As he is very strong at the minute, a 3-star Yone without your board cap should still be a top 4, but getting the 4 Crowd Diver trait active should get you much higher placements. A comp you can pivot to if contested is another one I'm going to go through in this video, which is Edgelord Riven. This is where you use Riven as your 3-star main carry and Yone as your secondary carry that you don't 3-star because you're contested. This is also a very strong comp, but will most likely lose out to Yone 3-star in placements.
You want style? You found her.
Before we get into this next comp, if you do find these guides helpful, I'd really appreciate you liking and subscribing, as it really helps support the channel. I'm always looking to improve these guides, so if there's anything you'd like to see added, then let me know in the comments. Okay, so this next comp is one that was on my previous top comps list and remains here in this patch because it's just so reliable at getting top 4s. It's a dual 3-cost carry comp that looks to 3-star both Samira and Urgot, and for your headliner you really want Country as the +1 trait so you don't have to run Katarina, but the actual unit doesn't matter too much. In most cases it will be Samira or Urgot. As this is a reroll comp, any augments that help this such as army building, trade sector or prismatic ticket are a solid pickup. 3's Crowd is by far the best augment for this comp, and if you find it, the average placements for the comp goes from a 4.19 to a 3.37, which is a huge difference. For itemization, you should focus on Samira, but if you find yourself picking up more Urgots and think you'll 3-star him much earlier than Samira, then you can look at prioritizing his itemization, but remember that Last Whisper is a must for the armor shred. The other main unit you want to itemize is your tank, which in this case is Thresh. I've suggested the 3 premium tank items, but just build whatever tank items you can find. In the early game, the only country unit at 1 cost is Tahm Kench, so you'll struggle to hit country at 2-1, but if you get lucky with the loot orbs and hit another country unit, you should breeze through the early game. The other openers I suggested is Heartsteel, as this will allow you to get some extra econ to hit level 7 quicker, and it has good item holders in Aphelios for Samira's items. In the mid game you want to activate 5 country as soon as possible, and if you don't have Samira or Urgot as a headliner by the time you hit level 7, you should sell your headliner and do a slight roll down to get one of them. From there you should really just be looking to slow roll for 3-star Samira or Urgot before going to level 8. The late game for this comp is really leveling to 8 once you've hit everything else and slotting in one of the strong frontline 5 costs like Alawi or Yorick. This isn't really a composition that needs to reach high levels to get top 4 finishes, and the success really sits upon you 3-starring your 3-cost units. The pivot option for this comp is to go to level 8 instead of slow rolling at 7 and dropping down to 3 country to put in the stronger executioners such as Karthus and Akali. You want to do this if you're being contested and need to wait for the other person dies before looking for 3-star Samira and Urgot.
A clever fox is never caught.
This comp uses perfect synergies across the board and lets you get a free item on your headliner Ahri by having 3 superfans active. The downside to this is that it means the comp is less flexible when it comes to pivoting. The key unit is of course Ahri, but what makes this comp so strong is the fact that it activates so many great traits. As this is a full AP composition, you don't really want to be going for this if you get lots of AD items at the start of the game. For the augments, you want any AP related augments such as Jeweled Lotus, Magic Wand or Unleashed Arcana. I'll always suggest Healing Orbs as a tier 1 option as it's just a great combat augment, but it's especially strong in this comp as Ahri has high single target damage, which means you'll be killing individual units much quicker than other compositions do. For the itemization, you only really want 2 items on Ahri as she'll get a death cap for free from the superfan trait. Make sure she has at least 1 mana generation item and any other damage items such as JG or Giant Slayer. Your other main itemization should be tank items on Nico, and then look at prioritizing a magic shred item such as Static Shiv. For the early game, there are lots of great options as KDA has 2 1-cost units, and there are lots of other units which complement that, like Crowd Diver, Superfan and Sentinel. Whichever opener you get, make sure you have good item holders for Ahri. Evelynn and Annie are both great options for this. Going into the mid game, you want to activate either 5 KDA or 5 Spellweaver, depending on the kind of opener you had. As this is a 4-cost headliner, you don't really want to be rolling before level 8, so make sure you pick up any Spellweavers or KDA units as you're leveling. Depending on whether you get the KDA or Spellweaver Ahri headliner, you'll need to put in an additional Spellweaver or KDA unit to activate the other trait. Once you get to level 8, you want to sell your headliner and roll down for Ahri. As this is a single 4-cost carry composition, this is quite risky if there are other players contesting you. To combat this, you can look to pick up any additional Spellweavers, as well as Zac on your rolldown, just in case you need to pivot. Lulu is a great option as a headliner Spellweaver carry if you can 3-star her, and should be much easier to hit than Ahri.
No one fights alone in the mist.
This next comp is my favourite so far, as Senna is ridiculously overtuned for a 2-cost unit. If you manage to find her as a headliner early on, you're really going to struggle to lose rounds. With this comp, you slot in Superfan and any true damage units you can find to increase the damage of your Senna. Depending on the headliner trait of your Senna, you will want to play either Aphelios or Yasuo to activate the other trait. For augments, you want any reroll related such as army building or prismatic ticket, but outside of that, any of the strong combat related augments such as healing orbs or blistering strikes are great. The true damage specific augment is also very strong, and if you manage to find it with a headliner Senna, you'll most likely get a top 4 for free. Itemization should be Shojin and Nash's, and she'll get an additional Shojin from Superfan, which will get her casting her ability as much as possible. As it does a lot of AoE damage, you want to position her anywhere that you can hit a lot of enemy units, so be sure to scout before each fight to place her in the best location. Your second itemization priority should be your main tank Echo, but try to spread out your other items as much as possible to activate the bling bonuses of each true damage unit. In the early game, you want either Superfan or true damage units. As it's a 2-cost reroll comp, a lot of your core units can be picked up early on, and you should know very early whether you're committing to the comp. Really, if you find an early Senna along with a BF sword or tier, you should look to go for this comp, but make sure you scout other boards to make sure you're not contested. In the mid game, you want to be leveling up to 6 at 3-2 and slow rolling your gold over 50 for Sennas. Make sure to put in either Yasuo or Aphelios depending on the headliner trait of your Senna, and once you have 6 or 7 Sennas, you should look to do a deep roll down to find the others before stabilising and econing back up to 50. Going into the late game, you should be leveling up and slotting in any additional true damage units you can find along the way. As soon as you have enough gold to level up to 7 and have 30 gold left, you should do so, and then econ back up and do the same for level 8. Pivoting out of this comp isn't really an option, as in order for it to work you have to commit early on. That is why it's so important to scout the lobby at level 6 and make sure no one else is contesting you before committing.
What is broken can be reforged.
And finally, similar to the first comp we went through, we have a 3-cost melee carry comp, with Riven as your main carry and Yone as your secondary carry. As I mentioned for that comp, this one is really for when you're contested with the Yone and need a backup, but you can also play this if you find early Rivens and a strong start with 8-bit, such as hitting a 2-star Garen before level 6. This was a B tier comp last patch that could get top 4s under the right conditions, but the latest patch gave some well needed buffs to 8-bit, which has turned this into a pretty good comp that is fairly underplayed right now. So if you're into playing comps without worrying about being contested, then this one is for you. Similar augment suggestions to our first comp, any reroll or strong survivability augments are great here. March of Progress is also a great choice if you see that, as it allows you to slow roll for your 3 costs at level 7 while still leveling up. Itemization is exactly the same as the first, but instead of your priority being Yone, it should be Riven, and we swap out Hodge for QSS, as Riven has a built-in shield in her ability. It's important that she isn't CC'd so she can get it off. Similar early game start, apart from with this comp, you want to look out for any 8-bit starters. Corki is a great opening headliner which can hold any AD items, and Garen is a great holder for items such as Titans. For the mid game, follow the same leveling strategy as Yone comp, and look to activate either 5 Edgelord or 4 8-bit depending on the Riven headliner you get. Try to position your Riven and Yone together in the mid game rounds, as they can melt the enemy front line. Once you hit 3-star Riven, you want to level to 8 and put in both 5 Edgelord and 4 8-bit to cap out your board. If you're going contested with Yone, you can also look to 3-star him, but if you are contested, then you can just get a reliable top 4 with just Riven 3. The pivot comp for this one is the Yone comp, as they're both very similar and can be switched very quickly. I'd suggest switching to the Yone comp if you come across the Yone headliner and still haven't 3-starred Riven, as the average placement of that comp is slightly higher than this one. And that's it for this guide. I hope you enjoy the new meta. For me, I seem to be having much more success with it than the previous Fast 9 with Jazz, so I hope you guys do too. See you in the next one.